and go.
Good.
All right, top notch. All right, we'll get started with today's Improvement and Services Committee meeting for Wednesday, January 13th. We're joined by members Alderman Joe Moore, Alderman David Nennig, Alderman Jerry Uzbisky, and myself, Brian Danziger. We're also here with staff, including Director Steve Grenier, also known as the Dark Lord of the Sith. Item number one.
Oh, there's one, I didn't catch that.
No, you don't need to. That's fine. Item number one, approval of the minutes from the regular meeting on December 9th, 2015.
Motion approved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Consternation there, Mr.
I'm
Moore?
just wondering if that makes the assistant director the apprentice.
There can be only two. You know that.
If you are familiar with the internal workings of the department, it's more likely that one of my assistant city engineers is the other.
Okay.
Well, if he's looking for
He
something,
happens to be dressed in all black today.
Oh my goodness.
How appropriate.
but if he's looking for something to do, don't you have something that he could probably do for you guys, like dust or something?
Not quite how it works, but we'll go into the organizational structure later. Item number two, approval of the agenda. Anything we want to move around?
Seeing as Alderman Zima is not here yet, I would say no.
Okay, do you want us to hold on those items till he gets here?
And let's go quickly.
I don't think so.
Are you sure? Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
We can always
go back
We can
and
also amend and
review.
revisit.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Top notch
I'll
then.
make a motion to approve the agenda as presented then.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Wozniacki?
No, I just second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number three, request by Alderman Zima on behalf of the residents of Green Bay that the Public Works Department make a comprehensive study of the stormwater sewer system in Green Bay, and further that the department provide for council consideration an estimate of the cost of updating our sewer system to resolve the ongoing water problem that continue to plague numerous neighborhoods. Also referred to Advisory Committee, held over from December 9th, 2015, Improvements and Services Committee meeting. Staff?
Included in your packet, we provided to you I believe it's a 7 or 8 page summary of our investigation. And to go through and hit the highlights of it, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Heckenleibel, Assistant City Engineer.
Short answer for Brian, we got problems.
Okay,
Done.
that's the TLDR version of it. Got it.
And as far as the cost, a lot.
Okay. If you could expound on that just a tiny bit, sir.
Just a tiny bit more? Yes.
What's that, man? Is that Johnny Cash?
In doing this vast project, the scope obviously expanded rapidly. The request to do a comprehensive study took on a nature of its own, and the actual report is this. What you have in front of you is the executive summary. The city of Green Bay has been starting to track backyard drainage issues since the 1960s. At that time, in 1989, a report was made regarding backyard drainage issues and putting inlets in the backyards of private properties. At that time, there was 300 backyard drainage issues. Since that time, we've received about another 250, so about 550 private backyard drainage issues. So that has nothing to do with the right-of-way, that's just issues in the backyard. Several years ago, council, INS and council made the directive to stop investigating and designing backyard drainage issues because of this 550, maybe 50 of those issues have been implemented by the property owners. So it wasn't a good use of DPW engineering's time. So now all we do is a comprehensive study or a verbal consultation to try and assist the property owner in a direction to go. Since in my 15 years here, I've been tracking several of the major storm events and the drainage issues that have come along with those major storm events and other known issues. And I have approximately 450 known high water areas of concern. Whether or not those are issues in basements, street flooding, significant street flooding, etc. On the bottom of page 1 is kind of the breakdown of east side, west side. The numbers on the lower left-hand side were actually the numbers I was going to present in December. Obviously, we had a little rain event on December 14th, and those numbers grew by about 120 rain events.
If I can pause for just a second. Alderman Zima, we are covering item 3, which is your item in regards to just the overview of the comprehensive study of the stormwater. We do have a memo outlining some of that, if we can get a copy for him, just to look at as we're discussing
I talked
this.
with the director today, and we kind of both had the same conclusion, I think, that, you know, the committee needs to review the report and consider it a bit, and then probably it's best to put it on a future agenda, what things we think we can address, or what kind of a long-range plan we want to make, if any, regarding the resolution of what's really a pretty expensive proposition, but it is part of our basic needs of our community.
It is
I
quite
don't
a,
expect people to take action on it. I mean, this is the first step of getting the report.
Mhm.
I'm sure it's thorough. And, you know, I'm anxious to look it over in detail, as I'm sure you are. So
Indeed.
tonight wouldn't be the big discussion of it, I don't think.
Heavens, no, I think, oh, I'm
So I
sorry.
was going to say, I mean, what is being presented right now is basically the executive summary. This is all the supporting details of all the problem areas that we've identified in about the past 15 years.
Yeah. And if I may, what I think we were looking to do, because again, this is something that's, I know, impacting a lot of the districts a little bit differently than some other districts, especially with the east side. I know Alderman Duane's district has experienced a number of issues. I know your district has experienced a number of issues that are probably much more severe than some of the other areas. So your perception on this is perhaps not only a little bit different, but your experience on this as well. So what we've already talked about, the director and I, is to your point, probably referring this to staff to work and present this to the other council members so we can get everybody's input on this, so we can have not only what they're
Maybe you'd like to have them make a presentation to the council at our next meeting.
perhaps, and that way that we can get all of the input and then kind of identify what the overall priorities are versus just the 4 of us making that. Also having staff being able to guide that discussion a little bit too. And then from there, you're right, kind of go into that deeper, more detailed discussion as to, all right, now that we kind of see what the overall issues are, what our priorities are, all right, here's our command objective, here are the strategies that we feel we can use to try and, you know, deal with those objectives, and here are the specific tactics we hope to apply that will actually affect those strategies that will affect those objectives. So,
And some of those points have been made out in this executive summary.
Sure.
So I've already, well, I'll jump ahead a little bit.
Sure, go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
So get you up to speed real quick, Alderman Zima. Ultimately, as far as public right-of-way impacts that we've observed in the last approximately 15 years, we have about 450, I'll call them recent high water concerns, complaints, issues that are being tracked on a spreadsheet. So that's citywide. There's approximately 259 complaints on the east side, 191 complaints on the west side. The city is broken up into smaller drainage basins, drainage districts throughout the city. There's approximately 315 of those drainage basins. Of that, 113, so approximately 1/3 of the drainage basins are impacted. Majority of them, again, on the east side being 75, on the west side 38. That includes the results of the 1991 Preble study are included in here, and the 40 known locations that DPW operations made a list on prior to 2000 and respond to on a reoccurring basis. As far as a magnitude of cost, making the massive assumption that all problems are equal, which they're not, but all problems are equal, and utilizing the costs that were identified in the 1991 Preble study, that there was 106 remaining issues to be addressed. That cost in present day dollars is about $35 million. So again, making the assumption all problems are equal, taking and escalating at 106 problem spots in the Preble study and upping that to the 450 problems in current day, that would escalate to just shy of $150 million to address.
Addressing each of these
The
at the
problem.
same level.
That's assuming everything is equal. The city does have some of the outfalls where the water drains from the street into the Fox River, the East River, the Bay of Green Bay are below water, also known as a submerged outfall. In some cases, we have storm lift stations that will elevate that water to a certain level and allow it to discharge into the appropriate water body. There are several storm outfalls that do not have lift stations. Therefore, that pipe is already full of water. If the pipe is full of water, trying to push more water out is a problem. That is probably one of our most significant items on how to address. I don't think I have that number readily available, but we already have 22 lift stations. About 8 are extra small lift stations that were installed in the 1980s, primarily on the west side. Howard and Pearl, Broadway at 5th, Broadway at Clinton, Lincoln Mary are just examples of those. Because of the high water that was observed in the 80s, just on a normal dry day, water would seep back from the Fox River and impact the streets in those areas. So the lift stations, these small pump stations, were installed to control that water only. They were not installed to take a rain event. Therefore, unfortunately, nothing has changed from 1980 or the 80s to the mid 2016.
Know that.
And therefore, the water impacts during major rain events is continuing. So I first found out the overall meaning of those small lift stations in December. I talked to former Director Wiesner, and he brought me up to speed on those issues.
Well, if I could just interject.
Yep.
You know, we met out in the rain one day there.
Yep.
At one of those that you're talking that's really undersized for our need there. Would that be a correct way to say it?
Yep.
And, you know, there's maybe $150 million worth of projects to make everything correct as we've known. And, you know, it's my hope that we could do some things that maybe somewhat Band-Aid, but not exactly Band-Aid. In other words, increasing the size of those lift stations to allow at least more drainage, less backup than there is presently at the site. That would be at least the first thing we could do. I think you told me that those lift stations cost about $100,000 apiece.
Depending on the size.
So, I mean, we have money from the Packer tax. I think these are some of the things we have to consider. Start doing some things for the city that haven't been done for a long time that need to be done. And again, I want to emphasize that I'm not talking about solving the problems for a 100-year or a 50-year rainfall. I'm talking about the rainfalls that we have ongoing that cause constant backups. I mean, once in a while something happens and it backs up, you know, and most people can live with that. And if they come, those kind of events only happen once every 4 or 5 years. If we can make some settlements to do that, I think, you know, I mean, our constituents are reasonable people. And, you know, people aren't going to get excited about it, but when it keeps backing up. I have houses in my district where people have abandoned their houses now because of water coming right over their window wells, knocking out their furnaces, knocking out their appliances, and then without the proper insurance, they walk away from the mortgages that they feel they just can't keep up with. So these are the things, in these trouble spots, if we do something in the short term that will help alleviate those things from happening, and I think the lift stations are one of them. But, and then if we get a good handle, and I have to apologize because I'm somewhat limited here tonight, but I just feel if we can put together a long-range plan, let's do what we can to try to do something to alleviate the problems and make them less problems than they are. They're still gonna be there. And then systematically take the most serious ones and start, we gotta start dedicating a couple million every year and start pecking away at solving these problems and really building our infrastructure. Because, I mean, you just don't want a city that's gonna be underwater every once in a while. So, that's,
And fast forwarding, what I've done is looking over this. Have been the largest amount of complaints, the reoccurring complaints, and the map that was just handed to you are actually 9 of the drainage basins out of the 113 that are continually, well, of the 113 that have been impacted. These 9 seem to have a reoccurring issue over and over and over.
ongoing issues.
Ongoing issues. And so, to address your concern, this would be my immediate target. So,
Well, I don't think anybody's gonna argue with that.
so 2 are directly in your vicinity, your Aldermatic district area. The one dealing with the lift station just north of Martha's is in here. The area south of Shawano, north of Clinton, from the Fox River west towards Oneida is in there. The Lambeau Field, Lombardi Avenue, Oneida Street area is a continual issue. The 1200, 1100 block of Smith Street is an issue. Elizabeth Street from University Avenue down to Main Street, in and around the 1900 block of South Main Street, and then out toward the 1800 block, I believe it is, 2400 block of University, the Clement University area are the target areas. In the east side downtown, it would be the Smith, or the Stewart Street, storm sewer area, and the Doty Street storm sewer area. So, affecting this area down here. Some of them have already been started as far as looking at and getting some resolution towards. Primarily the Lambeau Field area. The Packers are putting significant dollars into an underground storage system. That construction should begin shortly after the official Packer season ends. So the tank is roughly...
That's not till after the Super Bowl, right?
Exactly.
That's why he said the official.
The official.
Let's hope so.
I'm being optimistic as well. That underground tank, I believe, is something like 15 feet deep, 150 feet wide by 300 feet long, so roughly the size of a football field. We, at the last committee and council meeting, we took action to have a hydraulic and hydrology study done on the Elizabeth Street storm sewer. That was identified in the 91 Preble study as being undersized. We had plans to actually upsize and construct that sewer last year until the June rain event came in, June 14th I think it was, at which time I physically observed the flooding that was going on there, and it came to light, gee, the outfall is submerged under Beard Creek, not allowing the water to get out. So that triggered, there has to be some more investigation done. So that needs to be done at that drainage basin. We have to take a further, harder study, look at the 2 drainage basins in the Mason, Shawano, Fox River to the west, 2 basins. The 1900 block of South Main, I have a good idea what's going on. I don't think I can address it. We actually had a consultant look at that whole drainage basin, I think it was in 2008, and we would need basically the size of the Cops, new Cops food parking lot building area to build a nice big storm detention pond in there to relieve the flooding along that whole corridor. With the potential development going up off of University Avenue, we might be able to take care of some of that undersized piping and get rid of some of that high water issues up there, so.
Well, Matt, if I was to ask you to, I don't want to make any assumptions for any other committee members or council about what to do with the Packer tax money and that, but if they would see fit to give, say, 500,000 up to, say, 2 million toward helping resolve these problems, could you prioritize how best that much money could be used to have the best effect overall with the city? And then I think the committee has to work on a long-range plan, long-range capital improvements plan, that we systematically get at this thing and make a commitment over a period of time to, it's a 20-year plan. I mean, if we're working at it, these are just basic things that cities are all about. I mean, this is.
And jumping back to the 91 Preble study, that was kind of what the intent of that study was, to identify the undersized pipes in the old town of Preble area. We had a plan put together. I think they implemented 5 years worth of that plan. And it was physically to go in, upsize those sewers, and it was observed that those costs were expensive. So my understanding is they brought that back to committee and council with the recommendation to address those upsizings when we do other projects on that street, i.e. resurfacing or reconstruction.
But has that taken place?
That has taken place in my 15 years here. Prior to me, I believe it had taken place as well.
Because, you know, you redo a street, you upgrade the size of the sewer pipe, the storm sewer pipe. Well, it doesn't help if it leads to a pipe that's smaller.
Correct.
You know.
Well, in this case, in 2016, we actually had this discussion on Tuesday. We've identified a street that actually has no storm sewer on it, but the resurfacing will go through a street that does have storm sewer on and was targeted in the 91 Preble study as needing to be upsized. We actually had that discussion and said, yeah, let's take it all the way down to the larger sewer. So we're going outside our limits to hopefully take care of a small portion of drainage concerns in this area.
And probably 2 to 3 years ago, we realized that taking that approach that had been discussed and adopted by common council wasn't getting us where we needed to be. So with some of those Preble area known spots that needed to be addressed, we actually sat down and started with a plan to start attacking some of those, and we've started doing just independent storm sewer upgrade projects, chiseling away at that Preble list, and it's 1 or 2 a year that we started to identify. And I think, you know, a way to summarize what Matt has prepared here, what we've come up with based on historic data as far as recurrence interval, the number of complaints and the severity of the complaints, is reflected in the 9 basins that are on the map. And it would be our recommendation at this point in time to target these 9 areas for immediate implementation, immediate being within the next 2 years to 3 years. And we're going to concentrate some effort on these areas because they do have the highest number of complaints and the highest frequency of complaints. Go in, design a permanent solution, not a Band-Aid. Let's go in and get these 9 areas fixed the way they should be. And from that point, then we'll take a look at these 113 basins, excluding the 9, so 104 others, and start that priority ranking order that you had talked about for the purpose of long-term capital program.
Yeah, well, it's music to my ears. Really, committee, this is the first serious look we've had at since probably '91, and you know, these things all get on the back burner because there's other things pressing on us all the time, you know, our members change and the emphasis isn't there anymore and, you know, it just doesn't get addressed. But I think Matt has done a great job at identifying the problems. And I think it's just now up to your committee to recommend to the council what you think the best approach would be. And if there's some money for at least lift stations to give some temporary, or at least some residual help to the problems that we know exist, that it will help somewhat keep the flooding at lesser than what it is. I think it would be great. So you have time to think about it, and I'm really thankful that the good report has been put together, and it's time for us to really make these big decisions that need to be made. And if I have another commitment here in a little bit. Could I just diverge for a little bit? I've talked with the director about 2 items I have on there regarding lighting.
Yeah, we actually made sure that they were the next 2 items, sir.
But I do need to leave it. We talked it over, and I'm in total agreement with the director on it.
Okay.
And of course, you have to use your judgment on it. And the other item I have here, Mr. Deween has an item that's related to that, and he can't be here tonight, so he said perhaps we can put that off to another meeting, and we can deal with both of those at the same time because they are related.
Are you talking about the junk
Regarding the
pickers
junk
license?
picking and
Yep.
setting out of.
So item 4, number 7 then? I'm sorry, item 4, number 7, item 4, which is the junk pickers license, and then item 7, which was the reuse day, correct?
Yes.
Okay, we'll make sure to table those for the next meeting, sir.
So if you'd excuse me, and again, my appreciation for that, the hard work.
Number 10.
I think we're making a step in the right direction. And I really hope that the committee thinks about committing some of our excess tracker tax to at least trying to address, you know, what'd you say, upgrading these things could be about 100,000 apiece.
Yeah, per lift station, potentially.
It depends on the size that is needed. Some of the larger lift stations are gonna be well in excess of 100,000, so.
But those are within our reach to do, because we have some excess money.
Yes.
And I have to tell the committee, I don't know if you were having the same, I mean, I just, looking at my district, and I know it's, my district's different than Mr. Wisbiski's district, but, and some of the other districts, but my contact with the public, and it's an insufficient sample, but I've probably been to about 150 houses now. And of course, that is a question that I asked them, what do you think they should do with the Packer tax money? And over half the people just blurt out immediately, give it back to the people. And the other third to a half are talking about do something that will permanently help the city. Public Works, they term it in terms of potholes. Well, that means upgrading streets, really.
I think you mean infrastructure, really.
Infrastructure, railroad tracks are horrible. I mean, practically you lose hubcaps right and left, riding over these things. There's a lot of complaints about these sorts of things. The storm sewer problems, the flooding problems, the railroad crossings, which is a whole different ballgame that the chairman could do. But that is what people, here and there somebody will say something like, well, help Colburn Pool if it needs more money, or a couple people said something about a stadium. But by and large, people are generally giving back to the people in a way, if not just cash, in a way that will improve the infrastructure of our city, maybe some park improvements, those sort of things. That is what I'm getting back. Now, I represent more of a working class, retired area of the city, and some of your responses might be different. But that has been overwhelmingly what's come to me. And I think here's a place where we can address some of that. And anything to help this water problem would be very much appreciated.
We did set a few dollars aside within our 2016 storm water utility budget to do additional consultant services, design work, further investigation on these particular basins. So we're taking that step with potential implementation probably taking place in 2017. In order to do the rest of the study, design, construction documents, bidding. I mean, it could be late 2016, but I'm gonna say more
Well, it's
realistically 2017.
Getting the plan down, and I think we can do this in the next few months. We can come up with a plan and ask the council to approve that plan, and so that we have something that we as present aldermen, we don't know if we're all gonna be here, I know some are retiring. This is some legacy you can leave to the city. These are not the sparkling zip and pippins, these are getting the water out of people's basements. And I think these are the type of things we really gotta start getting serious about. Anyway, thank you very much, I have another commitment.
Understood. Thank you for your time
And I
and
will be
input, sir.
back to your next committee.
Understood, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Isbisky.
Questions I have on this issue is basically a comprehensive study of the stormwater sewer system was requested. And the way I get it, you have already done that and presented that in this text.
More or less, I mean,
So it could be expanded on with an additional cost?
well.
This is a boiled down version of that 100-page behemoth that he has right there.
Okay, okay.
The narrative that you have is a generic, I'll use that term, executive summary. It summarizes where and what the issues are and kind of quantifies it.
Okay.
The studying that needs to be further completed is how does the storm sewer system physically work? And from that, where are the deficiencies and how can we rectify those deficiencies?
So from that, this is your summary of the spots
That
that
need to
you are
be-
aware of, and
Those are the hot
one
spots.
of, one
Those are
of
the
which is
highest
what Zimmer,
priority.
which Zimmer is zeroed in on. Okay.
Well, these are the pain points within the existing architecture.
Yep.
And then, following up that question, goes on to say that the department provide for council consideration an estimate of cost of updating our sewer system, and it sounds to me like you had those dollars, but is that pretty final, or you
No.
gotta polish that up?
Until we know what the physical problems are,
Mm.
getting an exact dollar won't be feasible to get obtained. The
And
best I
then-
can do is take former numbers and try and,
Blend those and maybe do further studies and more decision-making moves, and also you're extending this out to 2020 to be able to do that.
well, in order to, I mean, yes, we can further prioritize our issues,
Okay.
drainage basin issues, and try and put more dollars to this. Right now, the general gist of the dollars that I presented, the problem is a significant financial magnitude of somewhere between 35 million and 150 million.
So I think a way to answer the question, Gary, is the comprehensive study that we did was based off of complaints and observations of high water. What we need to do would be to actually do a hydraulic design study to find out what the actual issue with the pipe is. And, okay, so we've done a comprehensive study based on observed and empirical data to find out where we know problems are. We haven't quantified what exactly that problem is.
You haven't really pinpointed it.
Right,
And
we've
you
narrowed
haven't
down
really
the-
come up with a cost
We've
associated
narrowed down
to
the
it.
areas where the problems exist, so that's where we need to focus our efforts.
Okay.
With the cost data, again, there was a study that was performed back in 1991 specific to the old town of Preble.
Yeah.
And some of those design efforts were actually done on a preliminary basis, on a scoping basis. And based off of that scoping, there was a dollar value associated with that. Because that's the most relevant data that we have at our disposal, what Matt was able to do was take that Preble study from 91, and using Engineering News Record cost indices, we were able to take those $91 and bring them forward to $2016. That brought us up to that $35 million
Okay.
price tag. Then if we assume that the problems identified in the Preble area are consistent with problems found around the city, so they would have a similar dollar impact, if we take those Preble basins and upsize that number to the 113 basins around the city, $35 million in current day dollars becomes $150 million
Okay.
citywide.
So
we've
150
looked at-
million would be more actual.
Well, the
Wow.
150 would be.
I'm gonna say, all problems are not equal.
Yeah.
Some of the problems
Okay.
identified in here are debris on the catch basin.
Okay.
Okay,
So what
That's-
we're saying is, the $150 million is not a true number, it's an order of magnitude
Yeah.
number.
Okay.
It's
They're using a
it's more
magnifier or a
like-
multiplier
it's
to
more-
try to determine
it's-
it.
It's closer to $150 million than it is to $1 million,
Okay.
kind of thing.
Because there's going to be some engineering issues that are well beyond just simply the lift station network.
upsize, well, the primary goal in the 91 Preble study was just upsizing the sewer.
Precisely, and that's what I'm getting at, is there's going to be some engineering requirements that could exceed just a simple blockage of an intake.
Yep.
Okay. Along with that, the extensive overview and timing is such that I think it's beyond my concern here is, we're all aware of the fact that we have an election coming up. And this is not going to get done with the group you have anyway. Eventually, it's going to be with a different group anyway, because this extends out beyond that, and probably beyond the next one. So, and I think Zima probably indicated that basically, that it's not going to be done like right now. The only other thing that I have to say, and then I'll open the floor to somebody else here, but the only other thing I have to say is I am not one to accept a Band-Aid approach to anything that can be done right and throw money away just because the golden goose puts out $5 million worth of taxes out there. That don't even look like it even cuts this. And to do a Band-Aid approach, I'm very sorry. I would not be for that at all.
That's the reason why I stopped the Elizabeth Street project after that June rain event, because I don't know if just upsizing that storm sewer will fix the problem.
Yep, and it's going to generate false hope, which is going to generate more protest and more concern than you ever wanted to see, probably. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Netting?
Well, you know, I don't remember what year it was that we created the stormwater utility and then tax on the water bill or assessment on the water bills. But, you know, that, my recollection on that was that, you know, that was an attempt, well, first to comply with regulations that had come down, but it was, wasn't it also a way of paying for some of the work that was, you know, that was needed on a systematic basis, you know, by assessing properties based on impermeable square feet of impermeable surface and all that. Now, I'm not sure that all of the stormwater problems are created by the square foot, how many square feet of impermeable surface there are in the community. Some of them might be natural factors that, you know, that are not necessarily created by the development that occurs here. But, you know, I kind of go back to thinking about, you know, what was the philosophy in creating the stormwater utility, and, you know, I know you've addressed a lot of the issues in that period of time. Not everything, obviously, but, you know, when we approve those stormwater utility budgets, you know, maybe that's a time to take a good hard look at some of these things, and, you know, if there are additional things that may be desired that would have a significant impact, you know, that might be appropriate to look at those things.
And to touch on that basis, yes, the stormwater utility, I think, was ultimately implemented in 2004 with the primary intent of compliance with our stormwater permit from the DNR. So hitting all those regulatory requirements, which included the implementation of stormwater facilities, wet ponds, dry ponds, biofilters, things of that nature, to try and get a handle on the reduction of sediment going into our public waterways. It also was to address some of the, I'll call it, minor storm sewer issues. I make a comment in here that DPW operations City of Green Bay, we do not have the resources to properly maintain our storm sewer system. We have a sewer group in operations that primarily deals with the sanitary sewer system. And I'm gonna say 80% of their time is spent on cleaning and trying to maintain that system, which we are augmenting with contracting services. In order to properly maintain our storm sewer system from debris and roots, and I mean, there's nothing we can do from the operational side regarding undersized sewers, additional resources need to be targeted in that fashion. So it goes beyond just the physical pipe, it's maintaining that physical pipe and all the infrastructure, the catch basins necessary to deal with that. I didn't quantify cost. I don't want to fathom what a cost is. Off the top of my head, we could easily double our resources out there. How do we pick up those costs? That's basically doubling, if not tripling, our current stormwater fees. Politically, that's a nightmare. So we have to do this in baby steps. Ultimately, we will address some of these within our capital improvement program and bond for some of these issues. My comment when, I'd love to see that 5.4 million all come to public infrastructure.
Exactly.
Will that happen? No. I'm being realistic. Will any of it come our way? Don't know. I mean, that's ultimately a council decision. But, I mean, with the December rain event, we not only had storm sewer impacts impacting basements, we had sanitary impacts. And that potentially could have been a direct result of so much rain over ultimately it was a 4-day period, December 10th through the 14th. The ground was completely saturated. So although the total quantity of rain equaled maybe a 10-year total rain event, because the ground was so saturated, it actually escalated up to a 25, closer to a 50-year event. The wastewater treatment plant was seeing 3 to 4 times their normal daily load, and their interceptor system actually surcharged to a point that it impacted our system. I only have one data point, so I'm taking other information and making some presumptions, but out of the 125 complaints that were received on December 14th, 50 had to deal with basement backups. 17 were directly attributed to sanitary sewers. So we not only have a storm sewer issue, we have a sanitary sewer issue. Again, additional design, investigation, studying needs to be done so we don't have to do a Band-Aid approach and we can do a formal, a final
An actual plan for resolution.
Correct.
And dealing with the issue versus just, like you said, Band-Aids
Yep.
that will temporarily appease some of the issues that we're seeing. All right.
I'd say for tonight, let us read this over, take it and read it over, and maybe we can discuss it for additional meetings.
I actually may have something, but go ahead, Mr. Zabisky, before I go. Mr. Moore.
For future reference, I'm going to ask that this map that you handed out, because you can't really read them that well, could you just assign numbers to these?
It was primarily just a visual.
Yeah, it would be nice, it'd be neat if we could just refer to them by numbers, because right off the bat here, and I just want to bounce this off of you, and maybe you have the answer, maybe you don't. I'm looking at the main area that probably concerns Alderman Zima, is bounded by 29 and 54, and
Which is
that,
drainage basin 106.
yeah, that whole long bit there.
Yep.
But here's something very interesting that pops out to me. It just so happens that the money he's looking for and not really wanting it assigned to, case in point, the possible ball field occurs right in that area. Is it possible in the construction of that ball field that I could eliminate a greater part of the water problems there in that construction?
The ball field
I'm
that,
really grabbing for straws here, but that.
the ball field is actually in the Greenfield area just north of Mason Street.
Yeah,
It's maybe on the opposite end of that.
Drainage basin that this all drains down to,
yeah,
discharges on Howard Street, which is just south of Walnut.
nice try, John. All right.
So unless we would physically repipe the system, which isn't inconceivable.
You bet.
Okay,
But just looking at the current drainage basins, the way they exist today,
yeah.
not, I mean,
I
there's
just
additional
thought- I
items
just thought
that
it
need
was
to
an
be.
interesting possibility.
It sounds like a bit of a pipe dream, though, that's the only thing.
But just, we're in that ball field area, we have a small storm lift station built in the 80s. It ultimately drains all the way up past Oneida Street, runs a storm sewer up Clinton. And Oneida, Lower, South Oneida, south of Mason, Mason at Oneida, those areas also flood. I'm gonna call it more of a nuisance flood versus a property impact flood. The areas identified here are actually property impact flooding areas.
Okay.
But we're doing a little bit of rework on the existing lift station that's there because it's out of commission right now. And ultimately, in discussions with Director Grenier and myself, we've basically said, well, in order to make this drainage basin work properly, we need to put in a proper storm lift station east of the tracks in that brownfield area.
Okay.
So ideas are floating around. Now it's to make these come to fruition.
And then one other thing, correct me if I'm wrong, two things. One, most of the development in District Number 1, I'm talking new development now, has always been addressed by the 100-year event. Is that correct? And you're talking 50-year event.
The stormwater ordinance requires the physical drainage to meet the pre-development, so meadow, undeveloped drainage for the 2-year, the 10-year, and the 100-year storm events.
Okay.
So the fully developed cannot discharge more water than the undeveloped meadow state for those 3 storm events. Thus, you'll see the stormwater ponds and things of that nature to hold that water back.
Yeah, that's what they actually did, the design by Red Smith
Yep.
School area there. They put in the 100-year retention pond over on Church and
The Brina
Off of
Creek
the road over there.
facility,
Yeah.
which in this December rain event did actually top and was starting to go over.
first
the
time we ever
emergency.
saw it flow. And then that became a topic of discussion throughout the neighborhood.
Yep.
They actually got off of me for a while and then quit asking for stuff.
Um,
One other stupid thing, not stupid, but I have a question. Just here lately, I was dealing with a situation where they told me, and Preble came up in your talk here, the town of Preble or whatever. Do you know if it was Preble that actually extended down to past or to Nicolay Drive and to the water at one point in time, or was that town of Scott? And I'm talking about where the old Carlton used to be, basically. Because somebody told me it was a Preble mistake, and I think it was a town of Scott mistake, and somebody corrected me on that.
I think that was Thomas Scott.
Okay, thank you. I can't figure that. Thank you very much.
I think Preble stopped right around the East Shore, Mahone Creek area.
Oh, yeah, okay, that would make sense. All right, thank you.
Mr. Moore?
I think the only commentary I had on here was just really regarding 2 of the areas across, 2 of the 3 that touch into my district here. Webster Avenue with Webster Avenue reconstruction. To make sure that it's done right, the first time.
Yeah.
That, like Jerry had said, instead of putting a Band-Aid on or not doing the infrastructure to what, the necessary capabilities are going to be. We'll just have to make sure we keep an eye on that when that's happening. And the other would be with festival, with the festival Quick Trip development on that weird triangle. That's another opportunity, whether it be under the parking lot retention pond that's funded through TIF. Obviously, TIF covers the infrastructure, is what it's meant for. I think that would be a good use of TIF funding, especially if it can help then the surrounding areas. So I think that obviously staff's gonna have to work cut out on these two projects specifically, looking 50 years down the road, you know, and looking so far in the future, because those are projects that are going to be here for a long, long time. This is, you certainly can't do a Band-Aid and then have to try to do a fix once the project is complete.
To address your second concern first, with that proposed project, they have to do stormwater management. So they will be doing something to reduce the present day flow.
Okay,
They will also be upsizing the storm sewer from the south side of 54, 57, through and around their facility, upgrading, I think in some cases, 2 to 3 pipe sizes.
okay,
Ultimately, we would have to go north of 54, 57 Sturgeon Bay Road, ultimately up past Eastman into the I-43 right away
okay.
to properly upsize that whole storm sewer system. So we'll take the interim step first with the proposed development. And we looked at that area to do some stormwater management facilities on the north side of the property, or north side of Sturgeon Bay Road, put a stormwater pond in there. The property owner basically shot us down because he didn't believe there was wetlands there. So, as far as Webster Avenue, reviewing and looking at the storm sewer system on Webster is part of the project, including stormwater management. We also have to take a harder look at that storm lift station on the north side of the East River, on the east side of Webster. So, things that are, again, in the works. However, the 1100 block of Smith, which is the habitual complaint ongoing, is the lowest spot in that drainage basin. So if we're gonna see a problem, that's where it is.
And it runs from there back to Eastman all the way down to St. George Street, so it's,
Separate drainage basons.
well, those are different basins.
Those are different basins, so.
Same problems, different basins.
Exactly.
Same block.
But that was one of the reasons why we reconstructed the storm sewer on
Day.
Day Street, right?
Anything else, Mr. Moore?
No, that's all I had, just
All right. Well,
foresight, that's all.
But I think, just again, to add on to that point, Joe, every time that we do a project, we
Great.
keep these things in mind. So, you know, as Matt alluded to, specifically with this proposed Festival Foods project on University Avenue, we know there's an issue there. So as part of our review of those, we're taking that into account. And even if it means we're going to upsize the pipe in the immediate area and it's going to discharge to a smaller pipe, we're still going to wind up with a necking problem. At least we've taken care of the issue within the limits of the project that's going on, so that when we do the project to the north, we don't have to come back and redo it. So we, as staff, we take that into account with private development projects, with street reconstruction projects. Whenever we have the opportunity, we exercise the opportunity to make sure that we take the steps necessary to get the infrastructure upsized, correctly sized, and have that taken care of upfront. So that's done as a matter of course.
all right. Well, I'll close this out. I think I understand Mr. Zbyski's point about the fact that we do want to make sure that we're putting together a comprehensive and complete plan. I'm not so much worried about who's going to be responsible for it, because I've always believed that we plant trees that we will not live long enough to see the shade from. So, given that,
Pessimist.
Hey, come on, speak for yourself.
realist, for me anyway, what I'd like to do, and I think this aligns with what Mr. Zimmer was looking for and what Mr. Nettig was alluding to as well. What I'd like to do is refer to staff, because I think we know what the problems are, and I've already identified, or I'm sorry, you've already identified some of the priorities here, and I think they align with what we as a committee would want to do. What I haven't really seen though would be kind of the, all right, what are some suggested approaches though, or what would be some potential strategies to address these? Now, I know you've already touched upon a couple, but I think it'd be best for us to see, all right, these are the recommendations the staff would make that would have the most bang for their buck and have the most long-term impact. And I would trust you guys to come up with some options that not only are economically feasible, but again, have the most realistic and impactful sort of approach here for the entire city. I know that's putting pressure on you guys, so I'm not saying you have to have that in a week. What I would do is suggest that you would prepare that. We would then absorb this material now, no pun intended, of course. But we would absorb this, process it, so we would have a better understanding of how your recommendations would actually apply to the city. We would then, at a future date, hear some of those recommendations and the associated cost with that. And I think this committee would then forward that to the council, saying, all right, these are some of the suggested approaches we should or could take. Now, Mr. Heckenlibel, you're looking at me with those, in fact, it looked like a slot machine, how much you rolled your eyes there. So do you, is that the wrong approach, or are you saying that's too much to try and venture into?
Until we physically get a consultant on board to model and figure out exactly what is wrong, coming up with solutions, viable solutions.
Too much guessing is what you're saying?
Without getting that additional information, you're shooting, in my opinion, a dart at a blank wall.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
Then
could I?
belay my last, please.
We need lift stations, we need to upsize sewers. To what degree?
But we
Again,
can't fix it and then back up to the source. Reverse engineering.
Precisely. All right, so is that going to be our first step?
I think the recommendation is, especially with some of the drainage basins, again, the drainage basin dealing with Lambeau Field, hopefully with the Packers implementing what they're going to do, we'll take care of
Some
a
of
good
that.
share of the drainage issue at Lombardi and Oneida.
Okay.
So that should be addressed. The Elizabeth Street area is already being, well, hopefully will be studied. We have a little bit of a snag with getting the consultant contract executed, but we're taking that step. It's in the process. So the four major basins, or the basins in the downtown area, the two on the west side of the river and the two on the east side, no, they're not easily definable, but there's four drainage basins there. We need to get a consultant on board to model those areas, to tell us exactly what the infrastructure is doing under various rain event conditions to allow us to give you final
So-
feasible solutions.
So what we would need to do then is actually convince the council that it would be justified to hire that consultant to do that modeling, and then we would, again,
Further
from
refine.
there, go back and start identifying the specifics as to what we should or could do.
So basically, from my perspective, for DPW engineering to focus on these 9 drainage basins and come up with consultant services, or allow consultant services to happen to identify the drainage issues.
Actually do the assessment for us. All right.
And that's where we sit with this. We understand this is a lot of information for the 4 of you, and for the 8 others who aren't with us here tonight, they're gonna be getting this summary report placed in their mailbox. Okay? We agree, this is a lot of information for you folks to digest in one night for the purpose of making an informed decision as to whether or not you agree with the approach we're taking. Now, we like to believe that we bring you reasonable recommendations and you trust in our, but we do want you to have some comfort level with what you're receiving. So I have no issue if, I don't want to take an action tonight that in any way could kill this report.
No, and I don't want us to commit to anything either in terms of an action that is not prudent.
But I also don't want to have just simply a hold, because a hold seems like we took no action. But in essence, that is sort of what we're looking for. We wanted to present the information to you so you got the 10,000-foot view of it. Give you and the other alders a chance to review this document, and then perhaps at the next INS meeting or in 2 meetings, whichever would be your desire, to have the ability to have some further discussion of it, and then give us our marching orders to concentrate on these 9 basins or do something else, some other variation. If the decision is that, yes, staff has correctly identified the target areas and we want you to concentrate your efforts there, then what Matt's alluded to as far as our next step, we will be coming forward with recommendations for consultant contracts to get a consultant on to do the drainage design in these areas. But that's a step after you folks have had a chance to review this report, get comfortable with it, and then give us our marching orders on where we should concentrate. our
Sure,
efforts.
and again, I appreciate the fact too that you are being sensitive to the input from the other 8 council members as well. So, again, I think I already know what will probably have to be done, but you're right, to take appropriate action here, I would say perhaps to refer to staff to present the report to the other 8 council members, and then for us to review within 2 meetings, I wouldn't say 1 meeting, but I'd say at least 2. To then, after we've absorbed it, to look at potential outcomes from there. So that would be a suggestion, but by no means a motion. I don't know what else the committee is thinking.
You know, just a comment, you know, and thinking about this without knowing the detail and, you know, all the data that you've got together, I would have thought that it would have more of a relationship to floodplain areas, but it really doesn't. It's really a case where you look at the areas where you know there are problems and you try to engineer, you know, try to come up with engineering solutions to solve those. And it could be, you know, problems could occur for whatever reason. It might be, you know, there's hydrology things, the soil conditions, you know, a whole mess of things. But you know, basically you're identifying the areas that have the most problems, and you're trying to engineer to address those. I think that's a very logical method of doing that. I agree we shouldn't let her go here, because there's been a lot of thought put into this. You know,
It is a subjective analysis. In going through the number of complaints, the largest basin on the west side, just south of Shawano, that area, of the 3 major rain events that we had in 2015, every single rain event had an impact on that area. It ultimately had property impacts as well, private property impacts. Same thing with the Stewart Street Basin and the Doty Street Basin near southeast here. Those ultimately have property damage impacts to them. So that's kind of the subjective nature that I was utilizing when I selected these 9 basins. Are there others that have, I'll call it nuisance high water issues? Yeah, there's water in the street. St. George up near Reber is one that comes to mind. I'm not aware of any property damage as a result of that nuisance high water. The water sits in the street, give it a half hour, 45 minutes, it's gone. On the near west side, Court, School, Maple, Howard, that water will sit there for hours and not go away. So, and in that case, it's actually then seeping into the sanitary system and ultimately seeping in the basements. So it has a property impact. 1900 block of South Main Street, the Pizza Hut area. Every big rain event, that area seems to get flooded out. Up in the Clement, University Avenue, again, that strip mall constantly was seeing property damage up there. So those are kind of the reasons why I picked these 9 basins.
All right. Well, what sort of action does the committee want to take here? I mean, do we like the idea of having them facilitate an overview with the other council members, giving us a month to look at this, and then from there, kind of looking at what options we do have for addressing this?
Like, is a month sufficient? I mean, would you need 60 days? I mean, it's obviously
Ultimately,
DPW pretty
I
busy
guess
right
what I'm
now.
looking for is concurrence that these 9 basins seem
Yeah,
to
from
be
the council
most
that these seem to be,
logical.
yep.
From our perspective,
Right,
we're ready to go.
okay.
We need the 4 of you as a committee to feel comfortable with where we are, and then ultimately, you make recommendation to common council, we need common council to also feel comfortable with the direction that we're heading.
Yeah, because we're
So-
talking
Well,
some substantial dollars here.
Yeah,
guys.
then I like the idea of waiting 30 days on this, so council has a chance to review this packet.
Mm-hmm.
It might be worth reaching out to them by email as well. It says, please review this packet and get
Correct.
back to us, so that we're not rehashing all this on the council floor.
Unfortunately, the executive summary doesn't get into all the detail that we just got into.
Maybe let them know that those details are available.
Oh, but that's why they
No.
should contact you, though. That's what I'm
Exactly,
saying,
that they should,
staff
if questions, reach out.
facilitate.
I'm gonna have questions, I'm
Well,
gonna reach out,
yeah.
you know. it's-
In addition, one of the nice things is, I did have Chris start the recorder tonight. These meetings are all video
Right,
recorded now, and they're available on the city's YouTube channel. So if
I'm on.
somebody does have the ability to sit down and actually watch and hear the discussion, so.
Forgot these are recorded now, I have to watch myself.
yes.
But I guess in answer to your question, we are ready at any time that, and if there is a decision to expand, contract, again, Matt has a lot of this information summarized. If we need to go to 11 of these basins as opposed to the 9, we can shift those gears pretty rapidly.
Okay.
The only reason we're looking at a 30-day suspension is to make sure that the council feels comfortable with the direction. The minute you
Right.
guys tell us, you pull that trigger, we're on it and we're moving. So 30 days is sufficient from our perspective. We could go tomorrow. It's making sure that you are comfortable with it.
No, and again, because the dollars you're talking about, I think it's
Right.
important that we have not only full disclosure, but full understanding from the council members too.
I would make a motion that we refer this back to staff to come back to committee at the second meeting of February, and then just direct staff to reach out and seek feedback from the rest of the council.
That would be the 24th of February. That would work good for me, and that's what I was just looking at.
That would be my motion then.
All right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye.
I would like to clarify something, though, that the reason we are taking this action is to allow everybody to digest an awful lot of material that's out there.
Right.
We should take that opportunity, we
To
hope.
share, yeah.
All right, any objections?
Ourselves included.
All right,
I'll just say thanks for all of your work on
Yes,
this,
I was
because I
gonna
was in
comment
your
that too.
office and actually saw the stacks, and I'm surprised you got it condensed down
Yeah,
into
I-
that folder.
this
There's the
is-
rest of it.
this is a lot of information to try and consolidate into 6 pages,
That
so.
looks like my
well
Renard
done.
Island file that I was involved in for many years.
Looks like my Walmart file. so.
This is awesome work,
Yours
though.
too.
Thank you.
I tried keeping it short, Brian.
No, you did, actually.
Yeah, I'm impressed with
You're
this.
20 minutes ahead of where I thought you'd be. All right, I'm not kidding on
I
that.
would like to just add one more thing. It's interesting enough that the locations that we have shown on this map, there's at least four of them, 3 or 4 of them, that have construction taking place in those areas.
Well, soon,
Or
yeah.
Proposed or,
Right.
Potential.
yeah,
Correct.
potential, yeah, okay. Great.
All right, that motion passes then, because we've already done the aye and then the nay. So, all right, thank you very much, Mr. Director Bible. All right, item number 4, which was requested by Alderman Zima, that the city consider allowing any person with a junk picker's license permission to remove items from the household waste dump sites on both the east and west side, which would reduce the amount of household waste, which eventually ends up in the landfill, and increase costs to city taxpayers. Held over from the December 9th, 2015 Improvement and Services Committee meeting. Staff?
At the request of Alderman Zima.
Yep.
I would just make the motion that we table this till the next meeting.
So we have a second. All in favor to
Aye.
hold? Aye. Any opposed? We shall hold that till the next meeting. We do have a name for this process or program that has been recommended, but we will hold and stay that until the next meeting.
I can't help but think that we addressed this not too long ago.
We have discussed it. I think I think you might be confusing a little bit Mr. Dwayne's proposal.
Oh.
About the setup.
Yeah, you're right, okay. Tim Dwayne, right?
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
Gotcha. All right.
Item number 5, request by Alderman Zima on behalf of residents that the city consider placing streetlights in the 1000 block of St. Paul Street. Refer to staff at December 9th, 2015 Improvement and Services Committee meeting. Staff?
We've included in your packet a graphic that shows the subject area. Currently, the section of St. Paul Street in question is near the center of the 11 by 17 sheet that you have. Existing spacing is about 555 feet between the two lights, which does exceed our recommended spacing.
I apologize, sir. I think we are missing the page 5 or item 5 graphic.
Send no item 7.
Fair enough.
I think we have 7.
Pass these down. Thanks, sir. There we go. Thank you. Yeah, perfect. All right,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's fine.
St. Paul Street, got it.
If you look in the center, the existing lights are shown in red. The proposed light is the one shown in yellow. That would reduce the spacing between poles 106-AA25 and 106-AA38. We now have a spacing of 305 feet and 250 feet. There is an existing pole located at that location. So it would simply be a matter of us requesting Wisconsin Public Service to add the fixture to that pole and connect it up. I believe that carries roughly a $17 or $18 a month charge to it.
All right.
Motion approved.
All right.
Can you show this to the alderman that requested it? See if that's what you want. Do you show this to us?
Yes.
Susan?
Yeah, he was in favor, I think, of
Okay.
the recommendation.
Thank
of the
you.
lights. So, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you. Item number 6, request by Alderman Zima on behalf of the residents that the city consider placing streetlights on the 1200 block of 14th Avenue. Referred to staff at the December 9th, 2015 Improvement and Services Committee meeting. Staff? Thank you, sir. Pass it down, pass it down.
I apologize, these should have been in the packet, but
No problem.
director was kind of sleeping at the wheel. We didn't get to print it until just before the meeting, so.
Just don't use your cell phone when you're at the wheel.
We will
Not unless we have a hands-free device, that would be contrary to city policy.
forgive this offense this time only.
So what we have here on 14th Avenue between 8th and 9th Streets, there are currently lights on 9th and 8th at St. Paul. Distance between is approximately 595 feet. We would recommend coming back about midpoint of the block. If you look to the east, there is an alley that runs between 8th and 9th, that's between 14th and 13th Avenues. That's where the existing lights are on the alley, because most of the houses previously were served off of the alley. The power poles are also in that alley, so typically what our policy has been is you obtain an easement from the property owners, come down the property line out to the street to feed the light. So in this case, we would come between either houses 1221 and 1219, or 1219 and 1209,
Okay.
14th Avenue. We have been unsuccessful in acquiring those easements from property owners in recent years. If you remember, we had a streetlight recommendation to go in on Boland Road a couple of years ago up in Alderman Stoyer's district. That died because we simply can't get the easements from folks. Knowing that that's a problem, I had staff go out and talk to Wisconsin Public Service about coming off of power pole 107-FF41 at 8th Street, and what you see is a dashed red line coming to the south. We would be looking at doing a directional bore to bring the electric line underground to a new pole on the property line between 1218 and 42.
12, I think.
Yeah, it'd be 1212 and 1218, 14th Avenue. Considerably more cost. We're estimating that the cost for this streetlight is going to be in the $5,000 range. But if committee wishes to provide this, and again, it is below our standard.
Yeah, it's well beyond actually the normal
Correct.
distance between the lighting.
We just did want to make you
Yeah.
advise that this is not going to be $100 pole charge and $17
No,
a month for the light. This one's going to be a little bit more expensive.
Go ahead, Mr. Biscay, I got comments too, but go
What's the
ahead.
source of money?
The funding for these comes out of the streetlight maintenance account. And that streetlight maintenance account for 2016 is a $70,000 budget item.
So it wouldn't rupture the budget, basically.
It wouldn't rupture the budget, but I don't think I'd want to entertain these requests on a regular basis because we do a pretty good job of spending that streetlight maintenance money.
Yeah.
So, a $5,000 out of $70,000.
It's a sizable chunk.
It's a pretty good shot up front, but this one is below spacing
Below standard.
by a considerable amount.
I would make a motion to approve it.
All right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, I just was gonna comment that actually, no, this area has quite, I used to live on 13th actually, so this area has a lot of foot traffic. There's actually quite a bit of pedestrian traffic through there and bike traffic, because I think there's a school on the other side of Mason Street that kids go to, so I think this is a very good usage replacement, so.
Yeah, I can understand the issue with the utilities going down the alley
Yeah.
and those easements.
Correct.
This is a way to solve it.
Yeah. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Item number 7, request by Alderman Tim Duane to consider a reuse day 4 times a year where people can put items such as windows, metal doors, cabinets, etc. out to the curb for pickup, referred back from December 15th, 2015 council meeting. Is this the hold again?
This is restored at the curb, and
Yes.
yes, this is the one that Alderman Zima indicated Alderman Tim Delaney would like held.
All right.
Make that motion to table till
All
next.
right, we have a motion to
Second.
table. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you. Request by Alderman Weary to investigate options to allow overnight on-street parking on weekends except during snow emergencies in residential areas. Referred to staff at September 30th, 2015 Improvement and Services Committee meeting. Staff?
We have included in your packet a memo that Chris Grillat, the parking manager, has prepared for you regarding options for on-street overnight parking in residential areas. I'll give the short version, and Chris, by all means, jump in or amend anything that I say. We did clarify that one of the issues or questions that we had was making sure that we properly define what is a weekend. We know, this is not a guess, we know from experience that the minute we call it a weekend, we're going to get people calling in saying, well, Friday night's the weekend, Saturday night's the weekend, well, Sunday's the weekend, so Sunday night into Monday must be the weekend. So we have clarified that what we're talking about is from 3 to 5 a.m. Saturday morning and 3 to 5 a.m. on Sunday morning.
Sure.
As we've noted in previous discussions, maintaining a limited duration for on-street parking prohibition lessens certain practices. It allows the residents to park into the night, but eliminates the vehicles from sitting on the streets 24/7, 365. We do have a policy in place that has been routinely exercised by residents. We've got the 6 events, no more than 2 weeks. And if that's not enough, residents do have the opportunity to come before this committee and petition for variance from that policy to get additional. If we were to make any changes to the existing policy, there are several steps that would have to be taken to allow that to happen. Ideally, city streets need to be marked to avoid confusion over which days this parking is allowed and is not allowed. Currently, at all points of entry to the city, anytime that you enter this, I think it's any point of entry,
Yeah, approximately 40 some locations.
we have signs posted indicating what the parking regulations are. All of those signs would have to be changed. We would also have to identify, possibly through the use of zoning, a green zone is allowed on-street parking on weekends, red zone is no parking on-street ever allowed at any time. That could potentially create confusion, folks parking in a non-residential area stating, well, gee, we're allowed to park here, why aren't we allowed to park in this location?
Plus special areas like the Lambeau Field area.
Correct. Parking division has to continue to enforce even in these potential green zone areas, because just because you're allowed to park on street does not allow you to park in front of a hydrant, too close to a corner, within proximity to a driveway, so there's still enforcement that's gonna be
Or
needed.
in no parking zones, no parking is no
Yeah,
parking.
signed no parking zones, so it doesn't completely eliminate these issues and has the potential to cause additional confusion. Snow emergency. I was having a discussion with Alderman Nenick before the meeting. Snow emergency doesn't mean when we plow, okay? A snow emergency is a defined event that is contemplated under state statute, and the Director of Public Works has the authority to declare a snow emergency. The December 28th, 29th snowfall that we had just a few weeks ago, coincidentally, that happened to be 3 years to the day that I took over as director of this department, okay? That was the first time in 3 years that I've declared a snow emergency. As many of you know, and several of you have contacted me to discuss, we have continued for over a week after that declared snow emergency expired. We have continued to go through residential areas conducting cleanup operations. If we allowed parking on street, now we were doing that during the day, but the potential does exist. We did come into some commercial zones and do some snow poles and some additional maintenance work at night, specifically because we knew that overnight there was no traffic on the streets.
Right, where we
No-
had
no
a dark
parking,
hour
right.
start for the
Sure.
workday.
If it was limited to snow emergencies, that would eliminate our ability to conduct those operations. A lot of times, we go into residential zones during the day for snow poles because of people gone to work. Sometimes we will target activities for that 3 to 5 a.m. because we know there's nothing on the street and we can get in there with our large equipment without having to pull blades up, dodge cars, avoid the potential for property damage impact, collisions with our snow moving equipment. That would go away, and we may be declaring a lot more snow emergencies when it's not, not active plow operations or in snowfalls that we otherwise would not have. Bear in mind that snow emergencies carry other effects along with
The
them.
requirements that we have.
We, during the snowfall event on the 28th and 29th, we kept heavy-duty towing extremely busy. I
Yeah,
don't know what the
wow.
final tally was, but
It was pushing 200 vehicles.
200
and they
vehicles
didn't-
or so that
They didn't
we
have an opportunity to.
cited
remove all
for
of them.
towing.
And if I may, the other part of that too is if we were to declare that on a more frequent basis, it then puts the onus on us to have to communicate that, which again, I think is always the challenge, is making sure that
Well-
people are aware that snow emergencies exist.
My bigger concern with doing that is one of the reasons that I've been as judicious as I have in declaration of snow emergency is the Chicken Little syndrome.
Mhm.
I don't want it to be an overused tool to where it loses the effect that it's intended to have. This would increase our need for public education, which, I'll be honest with you, I don't have a lot of staff available. We're pretty lean and right-sized for the operations we do. To have people dedicated to continuous education efforts on this is something we're just not staffed for at this point. And although it's not a primary driving factor, it's something we do need to be aware of. We generate about $128,000 a year in revenue from on-street parking violation.
That's just the weekend.
Right, just the
Nice.
weekend tally. That revenue stream goes away, and right now, Parking Division is a self-funded entity. We're gonna have to, you've heard Chris say it 100 times, I share the sentiment. We would rather have compliance than citation. However, we have to realize that that is a revenue stream that we utilize, and we're gonna have to make that revenue stream up someplace. Chris has also identified an additional 20 other considerations or potential obstacles that would come from this. Those are summarized in the memo. We find no solid reason that the existing policy is not working. We have a couple of issues that pop up on an annual basis. We have some folks who call in and say that they want the policy changed. However, for most of the city, we're not seeing that this is a serious problem, and the benefits of having this prohibition significantly outweigh what we feel would happen if this change were to go into effect. So it's our recommendation at this time that the existing policy be adhered to, and anyone who has a specific request for need to park on street more than what the policy gives them latitude to do, already has the avenue to come before this committee and request special dispensation.
All right, oh, sorry.
I
go
would
ahead, sir.
briefly add, we have a recent example, was started 2 years ago, a gentleman, and I would respectfully refer to him as kind of a vocal minority, but he had an issue with family coming into town, and I can appreciate that. And we addressed him, and he was very vocal and persistent, and we addressed him at this very level by giving him exceptions. You know, he has my direct number, he has my email, we've communicated a couple times. We've addressed his need, and he's one of the more intensive exceptions. So
And he's
again,
satisfied with.
And he is satisfied with the way that we've addressed it.
Sure. And we've had probably, I'd say, half a dozen since we've implemented that protocol. Maybe more. I think it's about half a dozen. I could be wrong on that. Discussion, committee? Thoughts, Mr. Moore?
I haven't really changed my opinion on this. I think this current policy that we have has been sufficient, has been fine. I think that we've amended the allowances enough to cover nearly half of the year. I mean, I can't see any reason in changing this.
Yeah, Mr. Netting?
Yeah, I pretty much was on the same track. You know, if we get calls from people periodically who would like to park on the street, but if we change this to allow it, I know we would have many calls the other way, you know, and you know, that's just a gut feeling, and I'm pretty sure that would be the case. One thing I noticed was kind of interesting in looking at both our ordinance and the web page where you can request permission to park on the street overnight, is we on the web page, you know, we explain that you can park up to 2 consecutive weeks, up to 6 non-concurrent occurrences per year. But then we say more than one vehicle may be parked only in front of your residence if there's space. That's kind of an interesting angle on it. And, you know, I don't think that's actually in the ordinance.
No, the ordinance is generalized, and the actual enforcement practice policy is a 3 or 4 page document that gets very specific.
Yeah.
And it's been brought to council since, let's say in the last decade, for updates and official re-adoption.
Yeah.
And we share that with patrons, but we didn't put that whole 4 pages into the ordinance. The
Right.
ordinance just
Yeah,
gives you the
I guess
basics and then the
yeah,
administration parking deals.
Right,
with
I guess
it.
the only comment I had on that was that it may be that for any exceptions we make, you have to park in front of your own property.
Yeah, and that was always the spirit is, if I'm going to park on the street overnight, it's in front of my house.
Mhm.
I'm not going to affect my neighbors.
No, which is, I think, another issue that we'd run into if
Right.
we were to deviate from that.
That was the only comment I
Yeah,
had.
Mr. Wisbisky?
In my decade of being involved in this, I think we have come up with several different requests, and we have met that, and it's my opinion that if it's not broke, don't fix it, and I believe that it's okay the way it is, and we have several different avenues that they can pursue, even come into this meeting to get a special case taken care of. And I would actually make at this point in time, make a motion to leave it the way it is.
It's the receive and place on file.
Receive, place on file, I guess.
All right, well, we have a motion to
If
receive,
that's
place
the
and
motion,
file.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Is that your motion, sir?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. I'm going to comment on this really quickly, too. I guess part of me doesn't see much issue with the policy as it is right now, because again, we have, I think, many tools that residents can use if they absolutely have to be able to park overnight. On top of that as well, I've struggled to see any circumstances or any specific situations that our current policy hasn't been able to accommodate, unless you guys can think of any particulars. Like, unless somebody, again, is kind of stranded downtown or something, but then I think we have alternative parking options for them as well. And they wouldn't be able to park there overnight anyway, because it's not residential. So, again, I think we have quite a few tools for them, and we're seeing also an influx in new technology and new, I guess, travel channels or transportation channels that people have, like Uber and whatnot, to get from place to place without having to leave their car overnight. The only thing that I do wonder about, though, is, and this is going to be something that's brought up, have we done any sort of measurement of what sort of revenue we would be able to make if we were to sell? And I know this is another administrative burden, so I'm just asking the question, not requiring an answer. I just want this to be a consideration, because I think this will be something that's brought up at the council meeting. Is there some revenue to be made, though, if we were to offer some sort of special parking privilege or some special sticker that would allow for people to park overnight? That would give us a couple mechanisms for tracking those individuals, and it would be a way for us to generate some revenue to offset that $100,000 that you're talking about in overnight enforcement. And with that, too, it would also hopefully encourage a certain type of compliance, because, again, we would make sure that people have those taggings and would allow us a little more strict authority. Again, I'm not asking you to answer that. I'm saying that might be a consideration to think about, though, that could be brought up with the council.
And short of giving you an answer, what I can offer you is, again, anecdotal in nature, but with parking by permit zones that currently exist, more often than not, that is handled through the use of a hang tag that goes on the mirror. And I can tell you, it is frequent, the number of calls that Parking Division receives of individuals who have received citation for parking without a permit, who we know the car, we know the license plate. Steve, I have the permit, the hang tag is sitting on the seat in my car. It's not displayed.
Sure.
When we come by, there has to be some personal responsibility from those who have it. It's in my glove box, it's in the console of my car, I forgot the hang tag at home. Would we consider, will we look into such an animal? We will, and we shall. However, I can tell you that there are issues with existing permit type
Fair enough.
programs
All right.
that I can see transferring forward to expanded permit zones.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. I'm sure this will be brought up, though, in a week, or 4 days. Item 9, request by Alderman Scannell to consider moving the cement boat moored at the southwest side of the Walnut Street Bridge. Stan?
This one I think is pretty easy to address. Waters of the state are outside of our jurisdiction. We have no authority to do anything.
This is navigable waterway, actually.
It
This
is.
is my jurisdiction, unfortunately. All right.
So we can appreciate Alderman Scannell's sentiment here, but unfortunately, outside of our jurisdiction, not much.
What we can recommend, actually, is, you should actually talk to either the Port Authority on this, or, actually, that's who you should start with, Mr. Hain, actually. So, I think this is actually a receive and place on file, but could someone direct him to contact
We'd be happy.
Port of Green Bay on this?
Make that motion then.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. I think there might have been confusion, because I think he thought because it was on the bridge that it was under jurisdiction, but again, that's navigable waterway.
Right.
And that's part of the Port of Green Bay, which is CRF 39. All right,
This next item, Tom met me in the parking lot and asked me to postpone it.
top notch. All right, item 10, request by Alderman Tom Duane to discuss with possible action the costs for permits for storm sewer work. Mr. Moore?
Staff, unless you wanted to review something on this, Alderman Duane did ask me to table this item.
Well, I just would like to let the committee know that Alderman Duane stopped to see me today, and the reason that he asked for this to be held, Alderman Dwayne felt very strongly that he needed to have he felt it was important that he and I discuss this matter before we brought it forward to committee so that I knew what his feelings on the matter were. I did not, the two of us just haven't had a chance to connect, so he didn't want this coming in cold without me knowing anything about it.
Fair enough.
So he simply asked to delay this so that he and I have an opportunity to meet, so I know where he's at on it.
All right, fair
I'll make a
enough.
motion to table.
We have a motion to hold, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That item shall be held. Item 11, request by Alderman Nicholson for a mini sewer in the vicinity of Schwartz and East Mason Streets. Staff?
This item's a little bit odd in that I don't know we often receive a communication like this for inclusion in the mini-storm program. Our recommendation would be to refer this to staff for further investigation for possible inclusion in the 2016 program.
Make
Yeah,
that
because you can't
motion.
just simply add it. right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to refer to staff to work with Alderman Nicholson on this. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Item 12, request by Alderman Moore to notify households and business owners along Webster Avenue, University Avenue to Radisson Street that a consultant has been selected for reconstruction and to put together a very general timeline of the next steps leading up to a time for public comment. Staff?
We just signed the agreement with Ayers, the consultant that was selected this week. Within the next couple of weeks, we will be scheduling the initial kickoff meeting. And following the kickoff meeting, we will then have a better idea of what that timeline is. The intent was in a very near future to have a public information meeting. The first thing we do is get to a 30% or a concept design. And after that 30% design, we would invite all the stakeholders, which include the adjacent property owners and neighborhood associations, if any, into that public information meeting. To also include a projected timeline of events is not an issue for us. So this is something we'd be happy to do within the next couple of months as time is appropriate to do so.
Mr. Moore, you good with that, sir?
The one thing I'd like to add is the consultant is required to create a website too,
Okay.
in regards to the project, which will be available to everybody. So as soon as we get them up on board and up to speed, then they'll create that website and we'll be able to send people to that for any new
Yeah,
information.
because I believe it's a public comments requirement anyway of the project
Yes.
to begin with, so. All right, Mr. Wisbisky?
Question, are there gonna be homes that are eliminated or moved or along that way basically? or-
Yeah, there's
Nothing has been decided
Impacted,
yet because we
okay.
haven't agreed on what when we get to the 30% design and we have, when we talk about the width of the road, the number of lanes, how that looks and where physically
Okay.
in X, Y it's going to reside,
Okay,
that's a 30% plan.
okay,
Once we have that 30% plan, once we go through the public information meeting on that 30% plan and gather the public comments, our general practice is we'll take that 30% concept design back to committee to gain approval from committee, and then that goes to council.
okay.
That gives us the authority to move forward to the plan specification and estimate process. So at that point, then we'll know whether or not properties are going to be impacted.
All right,
The expectation, based on preliminary scoping, is we're going to go to a boulevard section similar to what Belp Avenue is between Mather and Atkinson Drive. If we go to a boulevard section, there simply isn't enough real estate out there existing to fit everything in that we need to fit in. So then, yes, properties are anticipated to be impacted.
okay. Somebody just asked me that this week. Thank you.
Fair enough. All right, Mr. Moore, you good with that, sir?
Yes, absolutely. I bought my house near there in 2006, and it's been at least since 2006, there's been discussion of reconstruction of Webster Avenue. So if it's getting to a point where people can start gathering all their questions.
Actually
and-
planning for it,
And
yeah.
actually planning for a public comment session, that would be very helpful.
All right, is this a refer to staff then, sir?
Well, if it would be okay with Alderman Moore,
Or just to approve, actually? A plan?
either approve or receive on place on file
Yeah,
would be.
we could say approve a
I'm
plan.
fine. I'm fine actually with the receive. In fact, I'll make the motion to receive and place on
All right, sir.
file
Second.
with the information that's stated by the director.
Understood, Mr. Moore. We have a second by Mr. Wisbisky. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, fair enough. Item 13, request by Alderman Stoyer that City Planning, Department of Public Works, Parks and Police examine the county bicycle and pedestrian plan to look at ways to implement more lanes with safety in mind throughout the city. Also referred to Plan and Traffic Commissions. Staff?
The revisitation of the county bike and ped plan is actually a work item that county has identified in their 2016 work program. This
Okay.
was in the county planning and land services budget, which was approved as part of the county budget back in November. Luck would have it, I happen to be one of the Brown County Planning Commissioners, so I know that this was something they were planning on doing. So an overall review of the countywide plan is an activity that is county's purview, not ours, and is anticipated to be completed during this year. With that in mind, I can tell you that every project that we undertake as a Public Works Department, we do refer to both the county and the city bike pedestrian plans to determine whether or not additional accommodations need to be made within our projects to ensure compliance with those plans.
So
So
the
this is-
county plan really feeds, or we have to be compliant with
The
the county
county plan, I guess the best way, and I had a discussion with Cole Runge at Brown County Planning to make sure I was characterizing their plan appropriately. For municipalities that already have a plan, the county plan takes the existing municipal plans and gathers them together under a common document to make sure there's consistency among them. It also then fills in the gaps in those urban municipalities that do not have a plan. So it's part unique plan and part composition of existing plans. So the county bike ped plan, as it relates to the city of Green Bay, is more a recitation of our existing plan, not so much a unique document driven by the county.
That's what I was wondering, if one has precedence over the other, that
The
has to be
city plan would have
compliant
precedence
with.
over the county
All
plan.
right, that's why I just want to make sure which has precedence over that. Mr. Zabisky?
Do they work with, like downtown Green Bay? I'm a member of that committee also. I think we've
We do,
discussed
as a city.
bicycles and
The,
paths and stuff like that.
when, say, the downtown authenticity plan was created,
Okay,
that goes through planning department, who develops and administers the city of Green Bay bike ped plan,
okay,
which then feeds into the county plan.
okay. So.
We work with planning department to make sure that we are constructing projects consistent with the bike ped plan. So,
So downtown Green Bay would be included on the notifications, or do they get to put input or offer input on that?
generally speaking, any stakeholder has the opportunity to comment during the public hearings for individual construction projects.
Okay.
And to make prioritization, or to request that we prioritize.
And
or
relative
make
Correct,
part of-
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that happened during the Military Avenue thing, when we were
Yeah.
going through that. where-
But not only our projects, this also plays into park projects. So
Mm.
the East River Trail project is part of the larger city
Sure, for the
Green Bay
bikes and
bike ped plan.
pedestrian.
Right,
Sure.
right,
Okay.
right, okay.
And that's not through Public Works, that's through Parks Department. So there's a large breadth and scope of public infrastructure projects that have bike ped accommodations that staff amongst various departments implement as a regular matter of business. It may not always be as evident. It's not, because we do this every day and it's just a matter of the way we do business, it may not be as obvious. Public Works is absolutely horrible as far as public relations. And I'll be the first one to admit that. We don't go around talking about what we're doing. We'd rather just do it and make
They're
things happen.
engineers, yeah.
So, maybe there's some fault that we need to absorb on that we haven't been vocal about what we're doing, so it may not be in the public consciousness.
Okay. Interesting.
Fair enough, sir. All right, so we've got, well, so how do you want us to deal with this? Is this a receive and place on file, or is this again a refer to staff?
Well, is the planning department, are they the key people in designing and updating and
They are the key
so on,
people
the
in,
coordinators?
they're the key people in drafting the plan, but the implementation
Would
end of
be
that
us.
comes to both us primarily Esson Parks.
But if you think about the authenticity plan and where they're basing this off of, the requirements and the percentages, I hate to say it, I think that does go more towards planning.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, the bike ped accommodations that were contemplated within the authenticity plan were run through Public Works.
Okay.
So there's cross-departmental
Sure,
involvement, nothing
exactly.
occurs in a
Yeah.
vacuum here.
How often does the plan get reviewed so that, you know, if there are things that aldermen or citizens want to...
I don't, to be honest with you, Alderman Denning, I don't know how often our city bike ped plan as a citywide plan gets updated.
Okay.
I can give you a little
Yeah.
insight. As you all are most, you know, I served as city traffic engineer for my first 15 years with the city. And we were involved from way back in the 90s, or I was, you know, from when I came to the city with bike ped plan and the county planning. And as I recall, their goal was to update the plan every 10 years. That's the target, but they start looking at it before then, because, you know, you build part of the plan and it's not exactly the way you laid it out on paper, then you regroup, okay, here's what we got, now where do we go the next 10 years? So kind of 7 to 10 years historically, from my history, has been when they start looking at it again.
Okay. Well, I'll ask the planners, but, you know, I'd be interested in knowing, you know, are we approaching the time when they will review it again, or, you know, where are we? I'll talk to them.
Yeah, I'm not sure how old the current plan is. It's not real old, it was just
Yeah, didn't we just have to
revisited
do-
a handful of years ago.
Yeah, I think Mr. Sparacio was the one that kind of put that
I
together, right?
believe so.
Okay.
Now, with that in mind, what I can tell you, I think it was just Tuesday, when we were talking about South Webster, from Mason to Port Lear. The bike ped plan calls for arterial streets to contemplate bike
Yeah,
pedestrian
inclusion of, yeah.
accommodations.
Mhm.
So we did have that discussion relative to the zone in front of the hospitals for bike ped. Pedestrian accommodations are already included. There are sidewalks existing throughout and a need for sidewalks, given the nature of the businesses associated there. There is not sufficient right-of-way to put a dedicated striped bike lane in there without real estate acquisition, and real estate acquisition is going to be next to impossible, given the proximity of the buildings and the parking infrastructure necessary to support the hospitals. So I don't think we can widen the street to get bike lanes in there. I don't think elimination of the median is something that the hospitals would be open to. There is a possibility that we could widen the outside lane, similar to what we did on Monroe. I will tell you, I am not a big supporter of widened outside lanes. The only reason they went in on the Monroe project is because Trans 75, the state complete streets legislation, was in effect at the time. And because we accepted federal funding, we were obligated to do that.
It's a mandate.
No bicyclists, not even seasoned bicyclists. We've received reports from folks, no bicyclists will use that because they don't feel safe on it. The volume of traffic and that widened outside lane actually gives motorists a sense of security, and
go
has
faster.
caused heightened speeds.
Another lane.
The lane is
Yeah.
excessively wide, and they feel comfortable driving faster
Yeah.
than the posted limit. It's counterproductive, unless you can get a striped, dedicated facility in there. So as a result, we are not recommending bicycle facilities on that segment of Webster. Additionally, as Webster enters the city from the south, in Alloway, there are no bike accommodations there. We will be doing a reconstruct of North Webster Avenue between University and Radisson, but that's going to leave about 1.5 miles between University Avenue and Mason Street. That would be no bike, we'd have this short segment of bike accommodation with nothing feeding it on either end. It would be inappropriate to have bike facilities there. So as a result, decision was made at the staff level that we're not going to include bike, but we will include ped on that segment. This type of discussion occurs on every one of our projects.
Sure, I'm
We-
sure it does.
We
Yeah.
do this on our projects. We may not be posting it on our city website or on the DPW Facebook page saying, hey, we took a look and we're not gonna include it on this, or we took a look and we are gonna include it on this one. We just do.
Yeah. I hear a lot of pedestrian comments, you know, about streets where the sidewalks don't connect very well, or at the transit commission meetings, just about every month, they're talking about, you know, stop here, there, that, you know, the buses stop there, but there aren't good pedestrian connections.
It's all green
And
space that they have to
Yeah, it's,
walk on.
you know, it's things like that, it's connecting, and people are, I do think we are seeing an increase in pedestrian traffic in the community in general, you know, the emphasis on more health concerns and that. At least I see it, you know, in my area. And, you know, I've got some really nice trails along the Bear Creek area where people have to walk to them and walk to them, and realize.
Well, I think we're making a more walkable city
Yes.
too. I think that's been part of the strategy for quite some time.
More towards bike path, yeah.
And with new construction, the zoning and subdivision ordinances do provide for, other than vehicular traffic and what accommodations need to be made. It's more the retrofit in established parts of the city. And again, going back to the city sidewalk policy, that policy is largely complaint driven. There is a process whereby residents or alders have the ability to request that sidewalks be ordered in. Given the history and the nature of sidewalks, that is placing that responsibility within the Department of Public Works to recommend that sidewalks be installed or not. I would not be in favor of it.
Yeah, that's asking a lot of you.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Zabisky.
I know where this came from. The same individual contacted me. The question I have is, if somebody does contact us, am I hearing this right, that that is an issue that should be taken up with the county planning?
Absolutely not. If somebody has a request for specific accommodation in a location, they can contact myself, and if it's something that I feel would be more appropriately handled by Parks Department with a multimodal trail, we'll direct them off the parks. But
Okay.
anyone who has a specific request, by all means, we're open to that.
Yeah, I think in this situation, he just wanted to make sure that this is something that's considered and included. This might be better addressed if we just simply refer to staff to explain the process for public input and how people can make requests for accommodations.
Would you at that point get the county involved in that because you're on the planning? No?
No,
Okay, it's just
no, that's
gonna be
that's for us.
Okay.
That's one of the oddities of the Brown County Plan Commission is a lot of their activities, although City of Green Bay as a municipality is well represented on that plan commission, a lot of the activities undertaken by that plan commission are mutually exclusive of the city because of our nature as a city.
I thought maybe it was because of the nature of the way we work together.
No, it's simply because we are a city, we have a planning department, we have a plan.
We're autonomous.
A lot of the activities of the plan commission are to fill in for parts of the metropolitan area that don't have those services. So sewer service area amendments, for instance, those types of activities.
I want to say at this point in time, I like your attitude that by all means refer them and you'll take care of it. And I just want to cite Chris Pierlot for something he told me the other day, and it just really hit me right here. I was having a problem, an issue, and I called up Chris and I was apologizing. I said, these people are always complaining. And Chris made the comment, these are our customers, we have to take care of them. That's
Absolutely.
the type of attitude I really like, and I want to recognize Chris for
I'll keep them
bringing
around.
that back to my own mind. And I believe it was taken care of because I saw the same fellow, you weren't in church that doggone day, but this guy behind me hammered on me, and I was looking for you. And
So
then he,
told me not to go
and
to
then,
church.
and then I came to church and you had taken care of it, and you were in
Stop
church.
listening to that voice.
Yeah. Now we know who's the Sith apprentice. All right, perfect. All right. If not to sway anybody here, but I think this is something that I would recommend we refer to staff to discuss just the process and
I would make that motion.
Second.
discuss with Alderman Stoyer, just so he's aware of how people can make those requests. All right, we have a motion by Mr. Isbisky, a second by Mr. Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. All All right, item 14, request by Department of Public Works to replace 2 failed air quality monitoring meters for sewer section work. Staff, and I believe we have a memo on this, so.
You do have a memo. Short answer is, we have some air quality monitors that are used to determine ambient air quality for the purpose of safe entry into confined spaces. We have 2 different designs. One meter is actually a personal meter that's worn on the belt.
Or rat meter?
Second one is a meter that sits above the hole, and you drop the sampling hose down in. It can be at, depending on where you set the hose, it'll monitor the air quality at that
Call that the
level.
canary.
Basically, the difference is
That's what we call it.
one has a pump and one doesn't, because you don't need a pump with it if it's on your
No.
person.
Okay, so the 2 units that have the pumps that sit above the hole, they're over 10 years old, repair parts are no longer available, and they're not working. So we would like to purchase 2 commercial grade air quality meters. These things cost between $1,000 and $2,500 each. They were not listed in the budget for equipment replacement, so because they weren't in the budget, we're seeking approval to replace those pieces of equipment. We do have funding to pay for them, but again, it's an individual expense exceeding the threshold that was not listed in the budget.
I would make a motion to approve because the need is definitely there.
All right, we have a motion to approve not to exceed 5,000. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, I know the need for those meters. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Item 15, request by Department of Public Works to award the contract to DLT Solutions for AutoCAD licensing using the Government Services Pricing Contract in the amount of $10,634.72. Staff?
AutoCAD is our design software that's utilized by engineering staff. Unluckily for us, it is somewhat of a proprietary device. The government services quotation is very far below the market price for these licenses. Cost is in excess of $10,000, and according to city purchasing policy, we do not have the authorization to authorize that expenditure. Any expenditure exceeding $10,000 needs council approval, so we're just bringing that forward.
That's over by $634.72. I
It
make a
could be,
motion to approve
it
it.
could be over by a penny.
Yeah,
not
we have to have a
over-
I
threshold.
know, but I just want to get that on
All
there.
right, do we have a motion? Do
Move to approve.
we have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 16, review and approval of the 2016 Department of Public Works service rates. Staff?
Every year, we are required to bring forward our rate structure for various miscellaneous services. What we've brought forward to you is our recommendation for service rates for 2016. Move-outs, we're retaining the same cost as we had in 2015, so that's $70 for less than 3 cubic yards, 3 to 10, $140, greater than 10, $210. Appliances and refrigerators, the bulk of that is driven by the disposal costs that we are charged by Brown County. We don't anticipate a service charge increase from the county, so we are recommending holding refrigerators and freezers, that's any Freon containing device, $35 each, and all other appliances at $25. The carts, again, we made that bulk purchase a couple of years ago when we went to automated, and all we're trying to do is recover both the cost of the individual cart and a portion of our delivery fee for providing that to the residents. So both 64 and 96 gallon carts are proposed to stay at $60. Bulk waste, the charge for bulk waste is a computation that includes some labor, equipment, disposal, and administrative time. Recommendation is actually to decrease that from $49 to $47 this year, and that is largely driven by the reduction in fuel prices.
All right. And again, this is something that we can't profit on, so this
Correct.
is just for the actual cost of service. So we can't say like, oh, we should pump that up.
Correct.
All right.
Similarly, we have a computation that has some fixed fees due to administrative and equipment purchase, or equipment, and then a charge based on actual time spent. And I believe we compute No, we actually did take anticipated production rate and divide that by the cost by the number of feet that the equipment can process in an hour. So that's the administrative charge and the cost per lineal foot of sidewalk.
Okay.
Again, we are looking at holding those rates consistent with 2015, so 15 cents per lineal foot plus $52 administrative charge. Weed cutting, the administrative charge per parcel has actually come down slightly on that. The labor charge has held steady. Equipment has come down.
Is it fuel again?
Again, primarily due to fuel, and the minimum charge per quarter hour would be consistent with that reduction in equipment cost. So we are looking at going administrative charge reducing from $45 to $44 per hour, labor charge holding steady at $35, equipment charge $28, whereas in 2015 it was $31, and the minimum charge for a quarter of an hour would go from $61.60 in 2015 to $59.75 in 2016. Early setouts, in 2015, that rate was set at $60. We are proposing to go down to $49, and an hourly charge, a reduction from $154.25 down to $117. Early setouts differ from bulk and construction materials in that an early set-out is a cart that's placed out to the curb at the incorrect time. We have gone from 2 persons on a truck to an automated vehicle.
Sure.
Primarily, labor charges have decreased, so this reflects the time that it takes us to send the truck out and tip that can.
All right.
That's the large reduction there is the second person is no longer needed. Asphalt pavement repair, what we look at is our costs, and I'm guessing that the equipment costs have reduced in the neighborhood of about 90 cents. And that would be, again, a reduction in our, the equipment costs have reduced as a function of fuel prices. Coming back down, average fuel prices, even in 2000, going into the 2015 budget year, when we established these prices a year ago, we were well over $3 a gallon at that point, and we're down to around 2 right now, so.
If it's a concrete-based street, it's half the cost of a gravel-based street? How's that work?
And I apologize, I don't have the comp sheets here with me. I do have them up on my desk.
Okay.
But we actually have, it's a computation sheet that we've been using for about 20 years or so now. And we plug in the various rates. Difference being a concrete, if it's concrete base,
I think it's the materials that you're using, isn't it?
Right.
Makes a difference on that, so it's the material costs.
Oh,
If I remember this correctly, because I think Mr. Moore said actually a year ago why it was that way too, and I think we figured out
yeah,
it was the material
it
cost.
seems kind of counterintuitive. I think you can get away with a thinner layer of a it's
For
not,
repair, yeah.
it's not a true concrete.
It's a
And it's
patchcrete.
yeah, and it's a thinner layer, whereas if we have a gravel-based street, it's almost 12 inches of stone.
Because you actually have to pack a hole, where with the concrete, I think we're just putting almost a piece of tape over it that happens.
Resurfacing, yeah.
Yeah, which happens to just be made of concrete, that's.
okay, it's interesting. Okay, learn something every
I had
day.
a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Moore.
I was gonna ask about charges on like yard cleanups, or does this stuff fall under inspection?
I believe the charge for lot cleanups, that's administered through inspection department.
Right.
We bill them on an equipment and personnel hourly rate, and I believe that is set on overtime rates because that lot
Correct.
cleanups are done after the normal work.
Right, outside of the regular business day, because it's outside of the core function of public works.
Got it.
I know that last year Alderman Nicholson and I were looking at, and before, you know, we knew that you could only bill for the cost of the services, multiple offenders. At some point, our multiple offenders, and I think we all obviously get grass not cut in our mailbox, and many times there's 5-6 times listed on there in the summer, and they didn't cut their lawn once, we cut it 6 times for them, every other month or whatever it might have been. And it's the same fee every single time, and if it's not paid, it just goes on the tax bill, and a lot of times it's property owner, and it's just, continuous addresses that provide continuous problems regarding these. When you have multiple offenses on, maybe it's early setouts or if it's grass not being cut, at any time do these services that we have to provide get reported to the inspections department for nuisance abatements?
They do not, and the reason that they don't is nuisance abatement would result in a citation.
Right?
In order for the citation to be served and to be upheld in municipal court, we have to identify the offending party. If there's no offending party, it's impossible to serve the cite. Which, if you remember when Director Wiesner was here, this is one of his, it's nice that I can remember and channel Ed when I need to. That's one of the reasons that we went to a service-based fee as opposed to a citation, because it takes the burden of proof on who committed the offense
And we're just
away.
simply just
recovering
resolving the
cost
issue.
to rectify.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's no reason a person like, Mr. Olson out here, who's sitting through the meeting, who maintains his property and keeps it looking nice, and everything's gone through, knows it's on a nice block, but to have one property that continuously has long grass, has an absentee landlord, has, issues that we just go out and fix, but it never really ever resolves the problem. And that's what we're trying to find is how we can curb that from happening.
Yeah,
again.
I think though, if I may, one of the things we talked about, because I know one of these solutions we had tossed around was an escalation of fees, or a citation separate to that. But what I think we kind of all agreed upon last time, if my memory serves correctly, is just once that address is kind of put on notice, though, we have a much higher visibility of that address, and we are much more diligent at ensuring
Sure.
that the services are taken care of versus having to wait sometimes for the call-in, because inspections will be aware of it, and they will just start doing drive-bys on it to confirm compliance. So instead of having to wait for that call from a neighbor, instead of waiting 4 weeks for that lawn to get cut, it may only become 2 weeks.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but with it, snow and ice is a completely different animal, but long grass and weeds, we provide the minimum 24-hour notice on the first cut. Once you're a repeat offender,
Correct.
we no
We just-
longer have that
we just go and cut it.
We can just go cut it.
Correct, and that's what I'm saying, we
They get on
escalate
a-
it.
Sure.
After we cut it the first time, let's say long grass, they're on our hit list.
Yep, that's
if
what
you
I'm
will,
saying.
for the
They're
rest of
on,
the
they're on
summer.
the naughty
And
list
that's what I'm
right
getting
now.
at, is we
will
kind of
check
So
it.
we
escalate
just
that.
escalate the enforcement.
Yeah.
Where's Mr.
So we're being much more diligent on the compliance aspect of
Sure.
it versus waiting for the complaint to come in.
Right.
So I know that's not the same thing, but it kind of helps though, because it does generate more awareness of it and probably results in more fees. I just had one question for you. I guess I understand the fuel costs going down. Should we be hedging our bets on that though, and just, anticipating that the fuel costs are going to go down? I mean, that is now dependent upon the market. I mean, would we want to be the ones that are making that gamble? Why wouldn't we
Well,
want to maintain some of that cost
The
protection?
fuel, it's not a direct dollar for dollar.
Okay.
The resultant decrease in average fuel cost plays into the equipment rate that we are allowed to charge by state.
So this is still
statute.
something that's
It's dictated
relatively
to us
dictated.
from
All
the
right,
states, so
fair
we
enough. So
just-
it's not something that we're hedging so much as this
No,
is
this is the
average
state-
that they've been giving us.
This is the
All
state
right.
equipment rate that we're allowed to use.
Never mind then. Belay my last. All right.
Motion approved.
Belay.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 17, approval of a request from Robert E. Lee and Associates, Inc. on behalf of LMES Properties 1 LLC to maintain an existing groundwater monitoring well within the Hurlbut Street right-of-way. Staff?
Now we start getting into the easy ones. This is, there's simply been a change in ownership.
Oh,
So the consultant who's doing, who's representing the property owner has simply request to change the owner of record of the
Got it.
monitor, of the agreement
existing,
allowing the
sure,
monitoring.
sure.
well to
Motion
exist.
approved.
all right. Do you have a second? Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Director's report.
Motion approved.
Mr. Grenier.
Second with discussion.
Yeah, second with the report from the director. That wasn't even really that's not really a motion either, by the way. That's, we got to do the receive, place, and file. Go ahead, Director.
As I'm sure you're all aware, on the evening of the 28th of December into the day of the 29th, we had a rather substantial snow event.
That was fun.
About 13.2 inches were received. We did go into a full plow event. We started with primary streets, starting at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, went into a full plow at 11 PM that night. That plowing event lasted about 26 hours before we called off staff, and we were open for business but not completely clean. Beginning on the evening of the 29th, we did come back and started a snow pole in the downtown commercial area. That snow pole ran on the 2nd and 3rd. Let everybody off until, or we did the snow pole on the 29th and 30th, sent everybody home for rest, recuperation, then came back in and completed the snow pole on the 2nd. Continued activities for cleanup went citywide until the 8th of January. I did get numerous calls from residents and a couple alders indicating that we were not, what are you gonna do about coming back into the residentials? On Thursday last week, I did run a simulation with the AVL software that we installed on the equipment. And I can say without qualification that by reviewing the loader and grader routes, every route in the city was revisited after that snow event. Some of the routes were actually revisited more than once. I received a communication from one of Alderman Moore's residents who actually was asking us to stop plowing because we had plowed in their area 3 times.
Sure.
And some of the complaints that I got from residents and alders were that, we haven't been there. And actually what it was, we had been there and scraped the streets, and then with the warm weather and traffic continuing, the resultant snowpack had broken up some more. So it looked like we hadn't. Again, utilizing the AVL software that we have, we were able to see exactly where everything and how many times we had been back into each area. Cool. I am also pleased to say that by going back and doing a replay of the snow event on the 28th and 29th, we were able to see with the AVL software that every street in the city did get plowed.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, especially at the point of time of the big C right now.
Sewer and bridge section is continuing with their routine cleaning events, and bridge staff have been effectuating routine maintenance and minor bridge repairs. Sanitation section is out. I believe they started this week. They have been going out into the routes and delivering the 2016 information to every resident, so you should be seeing
Plastic bag.
the bags hanging on the carts.
I still have mine from the original.
It's weird, I saw some
hang
on
on
my
there.
street and some not on my street. Within, like, I'm not really sure what happened there.
I didn't put my garbage out this week. so
Neither did I, actually, yeah. I still have mine though, I do.
Engineering division, you're gonna need the 16 because that's got the calendar on when the weeks for overflow and bulk and things.
Don't worry about it, you're not gonna be an alderman anymore, you can call your alderman. Ask every week.
Hey, is this the week?
recycling week?
Sorry, Director, please continue.
Engineering division continues pulling their designs together, getting ready for bidding and public hearings and preparing the CIP. I'm hoping to bring the CIP forward either February or early March. I know there is some desire we would have to have the CIP brought forward, reviewed, and recommended for approval before we can forward the bond request to Finance Department. And I know there has been some discussion at the council level about a request to have that bonding request in prior to the election. We're gonna try. I can't guarantee anything. And then Matt with utility section is right now biggest thing we've got hanging over our heads over in that area now that Matt's completed the storm sewer review. Our quarterly and annual storm and sanitary reports for submittal to DNR and EPA.
Very well.
Very good.
All right, do we have a do we have a motion to receive and place
Motion
on
to
file?
receive and place on file.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Do
Motion adjourned.
we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Well done, everybody.
Okay.
Cheerio.
9 o'clock.
Wow.
It was because Mr. Heckenley will cut those 20 minutes. This is 12 minutes earlier than I anticipated.
We still could go out and get a power